The night started off with so much promise. It was New Year's Eve, and I had been looking forward to it for weeks. The idea of counting down to midnight with Emily, my girlfriend, made me feel like the luckiest guy in the world. She had this spark about her, this magnetic energy that drew people in. Tonight, she'd picked out this sequin dress that glittered under every light, and she looked stunning. We headed to the party together, a small gathering at my buddy Alex's place. It wasn't some crazy blowout, just a close-knit group of friends. That's what made it so special. These were people I trusted, and I couldn't think of a better way to ring in the new year. The night started slow, as parties usually do. A few drinks, some music in the background, and people catching up in the kitchen. Emily was the life of the room, effortlessly chatting and laughing with everyone. It's one of the things I loved about her, how she could light up a room without even trying. As the hours passed, the drinks started flowing more freely. Emily was knocking them back faster than I'd ever seen before. I didn't think much of it at first, it was a party, after all. But when she started taking shots with Alex and Jake like it was a competition, I felt a pang of unease. "Take it easy, Em," I said, laughing but meaning it. "Oh, come on. It's New Year's," she replied, her words slurring slightly. She leaned in close, her breath warm on my neck. "Loosen up, will you?" I tried to brush off the nagging feeling. After all, it was a celebration, and I didn't want to be the guy who killed the vibe. But as midnight approached, things started to feel off. As the countdown to midnight loomed closer, the party grew louder and more chaotic. Someone cranked the music up a few notches, and Alex decided it was time to break out his infamous drinking game. It was one of those games where the rules barely made sense, but no one cared because the point was just to keep drinking. Emily, of course, dove right in. She was laughing uncontrollably, her cheeks flushed from the alcohol, and her competitive streak was in full swing. I hung back, watching her down shot after shot like it was water. "Dude, your girl's killing it," Jake called out, grinning as Emily crushed another round. "Yeah," I replied, forcing a smile. But inside, I felt weird. She was having fun, sure, but there was a line, and I wasn't sure when we'd crossed it. At one point, Emily stumbled over to me, wrapping her arms around my neck. Her balance was off, and I had to steady her. "Midnight's almost here," she said, her voice dreamy and distant. "Yeah, you doing okay?" I asked, scanning her face for any sign that she needed to slow down. "I'm perfect," she slurred, planting a quick kiss on my cheek before being pulled back into the chaos by Alex. The countdown started, 10. 9. 8. Emily was across the room now, in the middle of the crowd. I tried to catch her eye, but she was too busy giggling at something Jake had said. 7. 6. I made my way through the crowd toward her, but before I could reach her, she grabbed Jake's hand and spun him around in a tipsy dance. 5. 4. Everyone was shouting, clinking glasses, and I felt like I was moving in slow motion. 3. 2. I finally reached her just as she turned and locked lips with Jake. 1. "Happy New Year," everyone cheered, but the words sounded hollow to me. I stood there, frozen, as she pulled back from the kiss, laughing like it was all a big joke. "Emily, what the hell?" I blurted out, louder than I'd intended. She turned to me, her eyes glassy and unfocused. "What?" "It's just a kiss. It's New Year's." The room seemed to go silent, or maybe it was just my own disbelief drowning out the noise. For a moment, I didn't even know what to say. My stomach churned, and my face felt hot, but my mind was blank. Everyone else had gone back to celebrating, oblivious to the fact that my whole night had just flipped upside down. Emily was already stumbling back toward the drink table, as if nothing had happened. Jake looked at me, shrugged awkwardly, and muttered, "It's just the drinks, man." She's wasted. I didn't respond. I couldn't. I just followed Emily across the room, weaving through the crowd. Hey! I said, catching up to her by the punch bowl. What the hell was that back there? She turned to me with this goofy, unbothered grin, her glass already refilled. Relax, babe. It's a party. It didn't mean anything. Didn't mean anything? My voice rose despite my attempt to keep calm. You kissed Jake in front of everyone. Her smile faltered, but only for a second. It's New Year's tradition, okay? Lighten up. It's not like I ran off or something. I stared at her, trying to process her words, but before I could respond, Alex walked over, laughing and holding out 2 shots. Shots for the couple, he declared, totally unaware of the tension. Emily grabbed one and raised it. See? This is how you celebrate, babe. Cheers. I didn't take the shot. My fists clenched at my sides as she downed hers and turned back to Alex, joining in on some inside joke I wasn't a part of. The night spiraled from there. Emily became harder to keep track of as she bounced from one group to another, always at the center of attention. She flirted shamelessly, leaning too close to Alex, laughing too hard at Jake's jokes, and even letting Ethan, the guy who always hovered a little too long, twirl her around in a sloppy dance. At one point, I found myself sitting on the couch, watching from the sidelines as she laughed like she didn't have a care in the world. It felt like I was the only one who noticed, or cared, that something wasn't right. And then came the moment that shattered whatever hope I had left for the night. I couldn't find her, the music was pounding, people were everywhere, but Emily was nowhere to be seen. I scanned the living room, the kitchen, even peeked into the hallway where coats were piled high. Nothing. Panic started to set in, but it wasn't just worry, it was something darker, a sinking feeling in my gut that I couldn't shake. I made my way through the house, asking a few people if they'd seen her. Most were too drunk to give me a straight answer, but finally, one of Alex's roommates pointed toward the back. She's out there, I think, he said, gesturing toward the sliding glass doors that led to the patio. The patio was dimly lit, with a few stragglers puffing on cigarettes and laughing loudly. But Emily wasn't there either. Beyond the patio was Alex's garage, the door cracked open just enough to see light spilling out. My heart was pounding as I walked over, each step heavier than the last. I pushed the door open fully, and there she was, sitting on an old couch in the corner with Alex and Jake. The 3 of them were huddled together, laughing about something I couldn't hear over the music and the blood rushing in my ears. Emily had her legs draped across Jake's lap, leaning into Alex like they were the best of friends. Alex had a bottle in his hand, offering her another sip. She took it, giggling as she drank, oblivious to me standing in the doorway. Emily, I said, my voice sharp and cutting through the noise. Her head snapped toward me, and for a second, there was a flicker of guilt in her eyes. But then she smiled like nothing was wrong. Oh, hey, babe. We were just chilling. You should join us. Join you? I repeated, my voice shaking. What the hell is this? Alex and Jake both looked uncomfortable now, shifting awkwardly as they sat up straighter. Emily, on the other hand, acted like I was the one making a scene. Relax, she said, waving me off. We're just hanging out. You're being so dramatic tonight. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Dramatic? You've been all over everyone but me tonight, and now this? She rolled her eyes, but before she could respond, Alex spoke up. Dude, it's not what it looks like. We were just messing around. Messing around? I repeated, my voice rising. Do you even hear yourselves? Jake tried to say something, but I didn't stick around to hear it. I turned and walked out, slamming the door behind me. I needed air. I needed space. Most of all, I needed to figure out how I'd let the night go so far off the rails. I stormed out of the garage, my chest tight and my mind racing. The cold night air hit me like a slap in the face, but it wasn't enough to calm the storm inside. I stood in the backyard, staring up at the stars, trying to catch my breath and make sense of what had just happened. Minutes passed, maybe more. The muffled sound of the party carried through the air, a sharp contrast to the quiet chaos in my head. I thought about leaving, just grabbing my coat and walking out without a word. But something stopped me. I couldn't let it end like this. I needed answers. With a deep breath, I went back inside. The warmth of the house was overwhelming after the chill outside, and the sight of everyone still laughing and dancing only made me feel more out of place. I made my way through the crowd, looking for Emily again. This time, I found her in the kitchen. She was leaning against the counter, talking to Ethan, the same guy who'd been a little too handsy earlier. Her laugh was loud and unguarded, and she was holding his arm like he was the funniest person in the world. "Emily," I said, my voice cutting through the noise. She turned to me, her expression shifting from carefree to annoyed in an instant. "What now? What now?" I repeated, incredulous. "We need to talk. Alone." She sighed dramatically, handing her drink to Ethan. "Fine. Let's talk." I led her into the hallway, away from the crowd. She stumbled slightly, and I had to steady her again. Once we were alone, I didn't even know where to start. "What's going on with you tonight?" I finally asked, my voice quieter than I intended. "What do you mean?" she shot back, crossing her arms. "You've been acting completely different, like you don't even care. About me, about us." She rolled her eyes again, a move that felt like a punch to the gut. "Oh, come on. You're being so dramatic. It's a party. I'm just having fun." "Fun?" I repeated, my voice breaking. "Kissing Jake? Flirting with everyone? Disappearing into the garage with Alex and him? That's fun to you?" She stared at me for a moment, her expression unreadable. Then, she shrugged. "Maybe I just needed a break from you hovering all the time." Her words hit me like a slap. I stood there, stunned, as she pushed past me and headed back into the party without another word. I stood there in the hallway, the noise of the party muffled behind me, but her words echoed in my head like a bad song on repeat. A break from you hovering? That's what she thought this was? For a moment, I couldn't move. My chest felt heavy, and I gripped the edge of the wall, staring at the floor as if it would offer some sort of clarity. But there was none. I decided I wasn't just going to let her brush me off like that. She owed me more than a flippant excuse and a walk away. I followed her back into the kitchen, but by the time I got there, she was gone again. "Where's Emily?" I asked Ethan, who was still nursing a drink by the counter. He blinked at me, clearly tipsy. I think she went upstairs. Maybe with Alex?" Hearing that made my heart drop. Upstairs. With Alex. I moved quickly, pushing through the crowd and heading for the staircase. My thoughts were racing, each one worse than the last. The party felt like a maze now, every person I passed just another obstacle keeping me from getting to her. The upstairs hallway was quieter, but I could still hear faint laughter coming from one of the rooms. The door was slightly ajar, and I recognized Emily's laugh immediately. I pushed the door open without knocking. Inside, Alex was sitting on the bed, his drink in hand, while Emily was sprawled across the floor, laughing uncontrollably at something. Jake was there too, leaning against the wall with an amused look on his face. "What the hell is this?" I demanded, my voice sharp and cutting through the room. Emily looked up at me, still giggling, though her laughter faltered when she saw my expression. "What's your problem now?" "My problem?" I stepped into the room, glaring at her and then at the others. You're in here, drunk out of your mind, messing around with my friends, and you're asking what my problem is? Alex raised his hands defensively. Whoa, dude, calm down. We're just chilling. Jake added, yeah, nothing's happening. Relax. But their words didn't mean much. The scene in front of me, the way Emily was acting, the complete disregard for how I might feel, it was all too much. Emily, we're leaving, I said firmly, looking directly at her. She sat up, her smile fading into a look of defiance. I'm not going anywhere. You don't own me. Emily, don't do this, I said, my voice quieter now but trembling. She just shook her head, grabbing the bottle from Alex's hand and taking another sip. You're being so boring, as always. That was it. I felt something break inside me, not anger, not sadness, just emptiness. I turned and walked out of the room, her laughter echoing behind me like the final nail in the coffin. I walked downstairs in a daze, the noise of the party blurring into a distant hum. Every step felt heavier than the last, my emotions swinging wildly between anger, disappointment, and a deep, sinking sadness. When I reached the bottom of the stairs, I paused, looking around the crowded living room. People were still laughing, shouting over the music, clinking their glasses like nothing else mattered. It felt surreal, like I was standing in a completely different world from everyone else. I made my way to the couch and sank down, staring at the floor. A part of me wanted to leave, to just grab my jacket and walk out the door without looking back. But another part of me couldn't quite let go. Hey, you okay? A voice asked, snapping me out of my thoughts. I looked up and saw Megan, one of Alex's friends, standing there with a concerned expression. She wasn't part of the drinking games or the chaos upstairs, just someone who had always seemed grounded. Not really, I admitted, surprising even myself with how honest I sounded. She sat down beside me, her drink untouched in her hand. I saw what happened earlier, with Emily and Jake. That was rough. I nodded, unsure what to say. She's really drunk, Megan added cautiously, but that doesn't excuse anything. Her words felt like both a balm and a sting. I appreciated the acknowledgement, but it didn't make the situation any easier to swallow. What would you do? I asked, my voice quieter than I intended. Megan thought for a moment, then said, honestly, I'd ask myself if this is the kind of relationship I want to be in. Someone who respects you wouldn't put you in this position, no matter how drunk they are. I nodded again, her words sinking in deeper than I expected. Just then, the sound of a loud crash came from the kitchen, followed by laughter. I turned my head instinctively, and there she was, Emily, stumbling out of the kitchen with Jake and Alex trailing behind her, all three of them looking like they just pulled off some ridiculous stunt. She caught sight of me on the couch and gave a sloppy wave. There you are, she slurred, making her way over. I stood up, suddenly overwhelmed by the need to get out of there. I think I'm done, Emily. You do whatever you want, but I'm leaving. Her face twisted in confusion. What? You're leaving? Seriously? Yeah, I said firmly, grabbing my coat from the back of the couch. I'm done with this. Megan stood too, giving me a small, supportive nod. Emily, meanwhile, just stood there, the reality of what was happening slowly dawning on her through her drunken haze. Fine, she said finally, crossing her arms like a petulant child. Go. Whatever. Without another word, I walked to the door and stepped out into the cold night. For the first time all evening, the quiet felt like a relief. The cold air hit me like a wake-up call, but it also brought a strange sense of relief. I stood on the porch for a moment, just breathing, letting the sounds of the party fade behind me. My mind was still racing, replaying everything over and over, but with each breath, I felt a little steadier. I started walking toward my car, the crunch of gravel under my feet the only sound. My thoughts bounced between anger, sadness, and something else, something that felt suspiciously like clarity. As I reached my car, I heard the door behind me open. For a split second, I thought it might be Emily, that she'd come after me to apologize or explain. But when I turned around, it wasn't her. It was Megan. She jogged down the steps, her arms crossed against the cold. "Hey," she said, her breath visible in the chilly night. "I just wanted to make sure you're okay." "I don't know if okay is the right word," I admitted, leaning against my car. She gave me a small, understanding smile. "Fair enough." For a moment, neither of us said anything. The silence between us wasn't uncomfortable, it felt like a quiet acknowledgement of everything that had just happened. "You're doing the right thing, you know," she said finally. "Am I?" I asked, my voice tinged with doubt. "Because it feels like I'm just giving up." "You're not giving up," she said firmly. "You're setting a boundary. There's a difference." I let her words sink in, nodding slowly. I don't understand how it got to this point. I thought we were good. I thought she cared." "She probably does in her own way," Megan said carefully. "But sometimes people don't know how to treat the people they care about. Or maybe they take them for granted. Either way, it's not your job to stick around and wait for them to figure it out." Her words hit harder than I expected. She wasn't sugarcoating anything, but there was kindness in her honesty. "Thanks," I said quietly. She smiled again, a little softer this time. "Do you want a ride or something? You've been drinking, right?" "I only had one beer earlier." "I'm fine to drive," I assured her. "Okay," she said, stepping back. "But if you ever need someone to talk to, I'm around." I nodded, watching as she turned and walked back toward the house. She stopped at the door, looking back over her shoulder. "Don't let this ruin your night completely. It's a new year, you deserve to start it off better than this." I smiled faintly, appreciating the thought. After she went inside, I got in my car and sat there for a moment, the engine off, the key in my hand. Her words echoed in my head. It was a new year, and maybe it was time to start doing things differently, starting with how I let people treat me. I started the car and drove away, leaving the chaos of the party and Emily behind. The drive home felt like a quiet meditation. The roads were nearly empty, and the rhythmic hum of the tires on the pavement was the only sound in the stillness. I kept replaying the night in my head, dissecting every moment, every word, every choice. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I felt emotionally drained, but also, lighter somehow. It wasn't the kind of relief that comes from solving a problem, but more like finally deciding to stop carrying one. I sat in the car for a while, letting the silence wrap around me. The soft glow of the dashboard lights illuminated the cabin, and for the first time in hours, I felt a sense of peace creeping in. When I finally went inside, the house was quiet. The Christmas lights I hadn't yet taken down still twinkled softly around the living room, a bittersweet reminder that the holidays were officially over. I dropped my coat on the couch and collapsed into the armchair. For a moment, I stared at my phone on the coffee table, half expecting Emily to call or text. Maybe an apology, maybe an explanation. But the screen stayed dark. I wasn't sure if that made me feel better or worse. Instead of dwelling on it, I grabbed my phone and started scrolling aimlessly through social media. It was filled with posts from friends and acquaintances celebrating their New Year's Eve, sparkling drinks, countdown videos, smiling faces. It felt surreal, like I was looking at a world I didn't quite belong to anymore. Then, almost instinctively, I opened Megan's profile. We weren't close, barely even friends, but tonight she'd been the only person who had shown me any genuine kindness. Her most recent post was a picture from earlier in the evening, taken before the party had spiraled into chaos. She was smiling, surrounded by a few friends, holding up a glass of what looked like sparkling cider. The caption read, here's to a new year full of better choices. I couldn't help but smile. Better choices, huh? Maybe that's what I needed to focus on too. I thought about messaging her, just a quick thanks for stepping in tonight, for being decent when I really needed someone to be. But then I hesitated. Would it be weird? Too soon? Before I could overthink it, I typed out a short message. Hey, just wanted to say thanks for earlier. I really appreciate you looking out for me. I hit send and stared at the screen, waiting for some kind of reply. A minute passed. Then two. Finally, my phone buzzed with a response. Anytime. You deserve better than what you went through tonight. Happy New Year. Her words brought a small smile to my face. Maybe tonight hadn't been a total loss after all. As I put my phone down and leaned back in the chair, I felt the first hints of hope for the year ahead. Maybe it was time for better choices, for new beginnings. And maybe, just maybe, this was the start of something good.